interface, but I'm going to kick this off. And if anyone does have any issues or questions about the recording, please feel free to reach out to me directly um, with any concerns. But we will record this for the benefit of the group, and I will try to post the recording in our Trailblazer community group, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So I'm going to kick this off and start to talk a little bit about why we exist. This group has been around for about 7 or 8 years, and this is really a community for and by Pardot users. And I stress this every single time we meet. A lot of what I've learned about Pardot has been through this group and through people that I've met through this and other Trailblazer communities. This should really be an outlet for us better exploring the platform together. And I want us all to collaboratively troubleshoot, compare strategies, and then tell Mike and I really what you're interested in learning about. I have gotten a lot out of this group by participating and putting some effort in. And if you invest in asking questions and telling us, what you are interested in learning about, we are more than eager to try and meet those interests and come up with new and creative things to talk about and people to come and present here. So mostly this is going to be Mike and I talking tonight, and I don't see anyone really. We don't have a very large group here tonight. Sometimes we have 30, 40, 50 people. But please do, if you're not speaking, try to stay muted. If you do want to jump in, I think we have plenty of space. If you do want to unmute yourself, ask questions, please feel free to jump in. But if you do have background noise, just make sure you keep yourself muted. So we're going to just go through a few introductions and some updates about the Pardot ecosystem. We're going to recap some of the winter release highlights that came out a few months ago with respect to Pardot. We're going to talk about the spring 2022 release notes. The spring 2022 release just came out about a month ago. It was mid-February, and Pardot hasn't done their own release highlights webinar. That will actually be next month. So if you're interested in a much more polished, much more educated version of that, I have a link later on in the slide deck. So Mike and I are your two fearless leaders for the marketers user group for Pardot for New York City. Mike is the CTO of Strategic Equities, and I run a registered Salesforce consulting partner focusing on MarTech and specifically Pardot called Forcery here in New York City. And if you are not currently a member of our Trailblazer community, I have put in short links in a bunch of different places in the slide deck. I will upload the slide deck to our Trailblazer community. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I say Trailblazer community, you can go find out by typing in this link into your browser, sforce.co 3BNL lowercase a, capital A, capital I. If you do that, you will need to sign in using a Salesforce login. You can use your Trailhead account if you want, your business account, but that's how you can stay in touch. And once you do log in, you will see our marketer group for Pardot here in New York City. And there'll be a bunch of different places where there's a little bit of a bulletin board, a lot of content. Mike and I have been doing this for a long time, and I try to be pretty careful to upload any of the, especially the really good presentations that we've done. Like Laura had done a presentation in our user group on connected campaigns a few years back. All of that is housed in perpetuity in our Trailblazer community. There's a full link here, as well as it's a good place to reach out to other local community members if you have quick questions issues with Pardot that you can't resolve with support or with your AE, we encourage everyone to join up and contribute, and then check out any of the content we have stored. I also want to highlight trailhead.com. This is a really, really great place to learn about Pardot. There's something like 40 some odd different Pardot badges. You can learn about marketing strategy. You can learn about the Pardot UI, Pardot Lightning. You can learn about how to utilize the Pardot API, as well as just about anything else that has to do with Salesforce or being successful in the Salesforce ecosystem. So you can learn about Marketing Cloud, how to become a Salesforce partner. There's a great trail, which is a series of different modules on the Drucker School of Management, and it's all free. It's a really fun learning management software that Salesforce provides, and you can earn prizes, complete quests, and really double down on your Salesforce career. And we say this every meeting, but as we were talking about a little bit earlier on, we are not the only game in town. There are a whole bunch of different online communities here in New York City that you can find at trailblazercommunitygroups.com. And there are about 6 or 7 different groups focused around different verticals. There's a developer user group here in New York, the admin user group, which I think they lobbied successfully not to be the admin user group, but just sort of the general Salesforce user group. There is a nonprofit user group. They are super, super active. There's Women in Tech. They are quite active as well. And we really like to cross-pollinate and cross-promote different events. And every single one of these communities is really incredibly welcoming, supportive, and a great way to meet other people in the ecosystem and also level up your career. Specific to that, I wanted to highlight a couple of upcoming events next week. Drew, the user group leaders for the Salesforce user group, and that's what was the admin user group, is going to be doing a presentation on burnout. And I'm sure that's something that really resonates with quite a lot of people in this day and age. There's so much Zoom fatigue and the great resignation. Now is the time, really, I think, when focusing on our professional career, when things are really start to change and a lot of companies are going back to the office. So Drew's going to talk a little bit about his experience and how he has burned out, but then also come back. He's a great guy. He's super funny, and he'll be presenting next week virtually. Also, the Long Island Trailblazer community, the admin group, is actually going to be meeting in person, and I've included a link for their spring 2022 release review, and actually it's going to be a meet and greet. So that's going to be in a couple weeks. If you're interested in checking it out, go to the link on this screen, or you can type in trailblazercommunitygroups.com into your browser and type in New York as the location, and you'll see a list of all the upcoming events that you can join. If you have not yet signed up for office hours, this is a great resource that does not require anything more than a Salesforce login. I should have whited out this little Premier Support icon, because there are accelerators that are available only to Premier Support clients, and that is if your company purchases an extra level of support. If you do have that as part of your SLA, as part of your company's Pardot package, I highly recommend utilizing those as well. But these Ask a Pardot expert sessions are really, really helpful, really, really useful, and you can go attend and ask engineer, get pretty much direct access to Pardot engineers. I found myself getting into live Q&A sessions and addressing things so much faster than asking, like filing a support ticket or other avenues that I've pursued in the past. There are also a number of great webinars and tutorials on Pardot's video platform of choice. They use a platform called Vidyard. This does not get updated super frequently, but there's some great getting started guides. There are real helpful intros into B2B marketing analytics, about marketing strategy, available on this link here. There is also a large Trailblazer community called the B2B Marketing Automation Trailblazer community that you can also join. This is comprised of thousands and thousands of Pardot users. If the handful of active New York Pardot Trailblazers can't really help you out with a question, log in, and this gets updated, with numerous questions every single day, in addition to actual product managers and engineering folks. You can get an answer to bugs and strategy, crowdsource any questions, issues, as well as get a whole bunch of helpful links here on the sidebar to a lot of different things and places in Pardot that might be beneficial. There is also a section for new Pardot resources. Again, this is not updated super frequently, as the last post here was Pardot Summer 21 release. But if you want to read about how Pardot may have changed, which is always pretty important to do as a Pardot administrator or as a Pardot marketer, you can read through and find out more about the new features here. In addition, Pardot really practices what they preach about content marketing. There are a whole bunch of interactive guides, a state of marketing report that Salesforce does every single year, and a whole bunch of webinars, case studies, ebooks that Pardot offers as ways to learn about how to use Pardot, how to level up your sort of marketing strategy and effectiveness, and you can filter down here within the resource library. There's also an upcoming event happening on Thursday, I believe, B2B marketing for the scale, at scale for the busy marketer. This is sort of going to be a higher level strategy for B2B marketing session. And this is one of the events that is going to be on the Salesforce event calendar I showed in the last couple of slides. And a lot of this content is not going to be available on demand, i.e. it's not going to be replayed. So if you have time and you're interested, sign up or see if there are any sessions upcoming that are going to be helpful and useful to check out. Lastly, if you do have access to accelerators, I highly recommend going through each of these different programs. Unless you're already a Pardot expert, there are a whole bunch of useful one-pagers and interactive sessions that you can join about B2BMA, about getting reporting out of Pardot, things to look out for in terms of your Pardot and Salesforce alignment, Salesforce campaigns, which are a very undertaught resource aligning with Pardot, and then some basic tutorials about Pardot features that you can learn about.
Ty, just to add, if you have a Salesforce accelerator and you find your firm's underutilizing it, it's worth reaching out to the sales rep to see if you can't flip them take advantage of experts in both areas. Just heads up like that if you're not aware, because there's two products there on the Premier Services that can help you out.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. And then the really exciting release highlights webinar. Like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the release highlights in spring 22 in our in the next couple of slides and stuff. But Salesforce is actually going to be doing this officially in about a little over a month or so. Hillary Scott and Rachel Newcity are going to be leading a session called Driving Marketing Efficiency in 2022. And they're going to talk about all of the different feature sets that were part of the spring 22 release, as well as probably cover a lot of the winter 22 release highlights, as well as the winter 22 release was one of the probably most momentous releases in sort of recent Pardot memory. And with that, I'm going to move on and talk about spring 22. Spring 22, we'll hold off on actually talking about the brand new features until we just, like I said, briefly recap the winter 22 release, which I believe that actually went live in mid-December, and then the spring release was February 11th-ish, and so we should have seen some of the new stuff in our org. But with that, like I said, the summer 22 release was pretty massive. There were a whole bunch of different features that went GA, generally available. Things like the marketing setup assistant. I'm not super crazy about that, but we'll talk about that a little more later. A bunch of different enhancements for the different builders, the email builder and the landing page builder. The landing page builder is actually fully GA as of the winter 22 release, and the ability to actually use the email builder content in Engagement Studio. Previously, it was limited just to list emails. The biggest things that are going on are really in Pardot at the moment are really on the back end. The V5 API has had some pretty massive optimization and overhaul, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then in the spring 22, there have been even more enhancements to the V5 API. It's now considered as having full parity with the V3 and the V4 API. Every single object that was queryable in the previous versions of the API is now available in the V5 API, in addition to a whole bunch of different other assets that previously were not, such as landing pages and email templates. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to talk about, so I don't want to bury the lead, but we're seeing so much coming down the pipeline, really platformizing the Pardot platform within Salesforce and taking a lot of the feature functionality out of the standalone application, making it available within the Salesforce platform. So the biggest thing that maybe it's not the biggest thing, but the most obvious thing that I want to make sure that everyone knows about and that knows how to actually remedy is that the Salesforce application using the old Pardot managed package is actually going away this year. So this is something that we want to make sure is actually hidden in our orgs. You can access this via the Salesforce App Manager. You go to Salesforce Setup, type in App Manager in the quick find, and you find the Pardot application. You should see two in your org unless you have not yet implemented Pardot Lightning. The application that says Classic Managed Package as the type you want to hide visibility from any Salesforce profiles, because this is going away later this year, and no one should really have access to this anymore. The other really, really huge thing that went live in the winter release was Pardot's overhaul of mailability. If you've been using Pardot for a long time, explaining how to sync do not email and email opt-outs to Salesforce, to your boss, to a marketer, to a client, it was always an incredibly confusing situation. The opt-out field was a trigger and had a conditional dependency to roll up to the do not email, and the do not email field was the sort of master mailability field that was flagged either by an email opt-out or a spam complaint, 5 soft bounces or 1 hard bounce, or just flagging that field as do not email. However, if you actually tried to map that field to a corresponding field in Salesforce, like a Boolean checkbox, those 2 fields do not, A, they weren't mapped out of the box, and B, they don't play nicely together. And I have run into so many different issues aligning what it means to be mailable in Salesforce and mailable in Pardot, and then explaining it gets even more complicated. Basically, Pardot did away with all of this. There is a new field, which you can see here is status of mailable, operational only, which typically means that someone opted out, or unmailable. And these 2 fields, which again used to have conditional dependencies, opted out and do not email, they are now completely standalone and function independent of one another. They're also able to be edited and mapped to Salesforce fields with corresponding names. They're able to be edited manually or via the API. So you can integrate with maybe a third-party consent management tool. And there's no longer this like really confusing conditional logic. On the back end, a product manager once explained to me that it was a master-master relationship, and that Pardot wants to be the master of mailability, but Salesforce also wants to be the master of any data. So there's sort of like competing overlap in terms of platform functionality, and both systems wanted to sort of be the database of record with respect to this field. All of this has been thrown out the window, and it's now much more simple. And these are the new fields that should be enabled in all Pardot orgs. So you have mailable, you have transactional emails only, or operational emails only. This is typically when someone has opted out. So we know their email may still work, but they've just said they don't want to receive marketing emails from us. Undeliverable is going to be a certain number of soft bounces or hard bounces. Or if the prospect is simply unmailable, that means that they've been deleted or archived. They live in the recycling bin.
Hey, Tigh, just to add, this has been a huge benefit in my firm in terms of helping the sales admin team that support the sales team to keep communications going to their clients and prospects. But just be cautious a little bit, depending on how big your organization is, in terms of running wild on this. A lot of people like to hammer it, even though it's been bouncing. Oh, it's been bouncing, fix it, bouncing, fix it, bouncing, fix it. You don't want to tarnish your IP, regardless of what it is, and just make sure you understand the reasons for the bouncing before you flip it. And just gotta add that. You still gotta be at a 98% success delivery, or Pardot will call you up.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit nervous about a lot of these new mailable fields because end users haven't really realized how malleable it is yet. Because previously, what would happen if you had a do not email field, that was sort of the master mailability flag within Pardot, and you might have an opt out. Now, an admin or a Pardot user could go in
That's
and
right.
click opt in to a prospect, but that wasn't going to fundamentally change the do not email field. So it doesn't necessarily make them opted out if you are opted back in. They were still unmailable. Same thing as if you had the do not email synced to a Salesforce field. It wouldn't necessarily, and there's a lot of complex automation that I've seen companies try to actually align these two field values. Basically, you needed to go in and flag this as do not email equals false, and then go to the corresponding Salesforce field and do the same thing there. Otherwise, because it was a Boolean value, and the fact that Pardot will always, it's kind of a weird idiosyncrasy in Pardot, but Pardot always will favor a value over a no value. It would overwrite the Pardot field, and the prospect would still.
Hey, Lara, I'm not sure I agree with
That
you
may
on
not
that
be the
chat
best.
comment. No, hurry. Sorry, jump in, Ty. Hey, Lara, if you want to join in,
Yeah.
I don't have a challenge clearing bounces. I'm
We
okay with
have
using.
seen it where, well, so we have seen it where if you get a hard bounce,
Mhm.
you don't have like a simple like way to clear it anymore. You have to update the email address to actually clear it. And then if you change the email back because the email address won't work to whatever you changed it because you're just changing it to clear the thing, like it still changes back to bounced. So I don't know. I've had people tell me that they had to open a support ticket to clear bounced things
I haven't been
because it's
troubled
not easy
that way,
anymore.
but I'm going to take a harder look now that you've
Yeah, I
raised
mean,
it.
so difference between bounced versus like manually marking like do not email, right? So the bounce status isn't one of these fields that Ty's showing on screen.
Right.
Yeah,
But you can
and the
allow them,
bounce.
but you can fix the do not email, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
idea when you change it to mailable, you're right. This bounce status still stays, but you can still now communicate, which is by flipping the mail status.
so opted out and do not email. Opted out, of course, would be the unsubscribe
Yeah.
thing, but do not email is like in my company we mapped it to a marketing DNC, marketing do not contact field in Salesforce. So we can just in Salesforce check the box and be like, oh, something's going on with them, or we have orders to not communicate with them for whatever reason. So that's our like that's like it's not opted out, but it's like we're choosing not to email them. But bounced is still a status you can only clear by changing the email address. You can't flip a mailability field to clear a bounce status.
Yeah, and mailability, the bounce status is it's permanently stored, and
Right.
Lars bringing up like again one of these weird idiosyncrasies. What you would actually have to do to wipe out bounce statuses in bulk is export all of your Pardot contacts or prospects that you wanted to change with the CRM ID, change their
Yeah.
email address, and add like a +1 to make it a wrong
then
email
back.
address, which clears the bounce code, and then re-import with the same CRM ID, obviously as the unique identifier, which is just such a
So it's a
such a
pain in the
wonky.
ass, and
Yeah.
it doesn't actually fix it because it goes back to the bounce status.
That's really interesting because that might be the reason why I had a problem with an account recently and couldn't figure out why. Because I've been very successful with just changing the mailability and clearing up, those emails you get back about a bad email address or their mail server's down, whatever the reason was that you couldn't get it out there. Cool. Thank you for that heads up, Larry.
Yeah. If you ever want to get seriously confused, there's a whole like decision matrix that they probably took it down on Salesforce's help about in which case, like if recipient does this, and you have Salesforce and Pardot mapped to this field, this is what's going to happen. It was like this will happen, this won't happen, this will happen, this won't happen, this won't happen, this will happen, and it's a real challenge to understand, even more challenging to communicate. But this really simplifies a lot of that it's a drastic overhaul, but it also gives a whole lot more control to the end user to just say, oh, I want to opt
Right.
this person back in without really getting consent, and letting a salesperson define consent is always pretty risky to deliverability from my personal experience. Leave that to your LMC team. The other really big announcement and release in the winter 2022 release notes was the launch of the Pardot landing page builder, very similar to the Pardot email builder experience, allowing Salesforce users to create landing pages not in the Pardot platform, using layout templates and maybe the stock templates, which were, to be honest, just totally terrible, but actually build responsive landing pages, very similar to how you would design a Lightning record page and the Pardot email builder template. So different types of elements, as we had an event about a year ago announcing Kyle Skibby talking about the launch of the email builder, the different elements of a landing page here. So we have buttons, HTML, Pardot forms, rich text areas are really and literally just drag and drop into the central canvas section, which again is going to generate a responsive template out of the box. Very few of the classic Pardot landing pages are really truly responsive, unless your landing page or email developer was pretty competent in their cross device and cross browser compatibility coding, and then from this canvas, different elements are individually stylable in this detail section on the right hand side. So if you clicked on the canvas on this image, you could modulate the size of the image, alt text, etc. On the right hand side, same thing with this text entry section. There's a very cool button builder, but this is pretty limited, and while this landing page asset will be visible in Pardot, in the Pardot application, it won't be actually editable via the legacy Pardot landing page builder, the same way that email templates are not available in the WYSIWYG editor. So it's still very, very new for my use of Pardot, but it's definitely a feature that you want to think about enabling, because it really will be the future of how Pardot assets are going to be created. All right, so the other thing that I wanted to mention is that the email builder templates, which again are going to be created in Salesforce and stored in Salesforce, visible in Pardot, but not editable using the Pardot email builder. They started off as only being available for list emails, and if you recall, list emails are one of the 4 types of emails you can designate an email template available for. The email builder templates were not available in one-to-one emails or autoresponders or engagement program emails. As of the winter 2022 release, you can go in and click on this activate for automation and add the email template into your Engagement Studio campaigns. And I'll talk about this later, but the spring 22 release actually allows automation rules, or actually completion actions, send an email via completion action as well. So it's very slowly the email builder template is getting parity. The email template builder is getting parity with the WYSIWYG editor. There's also a private beta. I think I might have actually had 2 slides about this public beta rather, meaning that you can actually sign up and enable this in your org. It's an open beta to enable Slack notifications from completion actions. And an example of this is maybe you have a specific form or an email that went out to really high value targets, and if they do something to a particular link, you can actually take action with a completion action on that prospect based on that type of engagement. You can also notify internal users in a Slack channel, which is a really cool integration and feature to give marketing or maybe salespeople real-time notifications of behavioral engagement. There's also an additional Einstein feature for account identification. We've seen a lot of Einstein features in Pardot on the prospect, so leads and contacts, but getting more recommendations and artificially intelligent recommendations around how good a company is looking to convert to an opportunity is going to be pretty helpful. And just like in the lead and contact record pages, there are positive and negative indicators identified in this Lightning component. Again, in Salesforce, listed on the page here to why the AI thinks, why Einstein thinks that a business looks good or bad, and an account looks good or bad. If you do not have access to Pardot Einstein today, you probably won't have access to this. I believe this is only available in accounts with Pardot Advanced or Premium. The last thing I want to note is that there has been so much more support and product development around Pardot's API. The V5 Pardot API was completely overhauled, and the actual documentation around the API and its usage is has just exploded in this new developer center. Again, this went live with the makeover with Salesforce's new sort of design motif, I think in December or so. But you can learn a lot more at developer.pardot.com, or Pardot released a whole trail on Trailhead, and I just threw a link in the chat where you can learn about actually building applications on the Pardot API, which used to be super limited. Now, the sky's really the limit. It's super exciting. The advancements that are going on with actually integrating and making Pardot more extensible to third-party applications. All right, so I want to talk a little bit. So that was all stuff that happened in the winter 22 release, and a lot of this kind of dovetails with the spring 2022 release highlights. And so I want to dive right in and just continue talking about the V5 API. So like I said, everything that was available in the V3 and the V4 API was not available in the V5 API. It was redesigned with much more modern web standards and sort of ease of access and communicability. But certain objects were no longer available that were in previous APIs, and the V5 API now has everything that the V3 and the V4 API has. In addition, there are new objects that we can query and write to in the API, most notably templates. So email templates. So if you have your own system of email templates, if you're building an application where you want to design a series of email templates and have this plug into a client's Pardot.org, you could do this via the API. You can auto-generate form handlers on the fly, or layout templates if you have really complicated styling needs for or extensive styling needs for designing your landing pages, your forms, your email preference pages, your unsubscribe pages. All that can be controlled via the API. And again, developer.pardot.com is where you can find out a lot more about this. Also, the API itself is just going to be a whole lot more manageable. There's a whole new querying functionality that allow you to query different assets. And like I said, the benefit is really, extensibility. We're going to see more and more external tools integrating with Pardot. I can't think of the last time I've seen a new native connector, being able to be integrated into Pardot. Like Zoom is the best example. There, Salesforce uses Zoom all the time. Benioff's talking about how Zoom is such a great Salesforce, success story. Pardot uses Zoom, and yet Zoom has no native connector. You need to use a piece of middleware or purchase a tier of Zoom that has Pardot connectivity. The advancements in the API are really going to open up that connectivity to third-party platforms. And what we're going to see in the near term is going to be really, external design tools. I'm already looking into, using tools that have much better email builders, where it's just a click of a button to import that design into Pardot. Maybe you have multiple business units and you want to copy a template from one place to another, and there's no ability to do that via the email builder to export like all the HTML. You'd have to manually go in and create each different asset. So that massive improvements here for anyone who is a developer or development minded. There's also a brand new JavaScript API built around consent and tracking, and this is something that's becoming so much more important for many larger companies. Laws and the expectations around consumer privacy are changing really rapidly and have done so over the past couple of years. So it's really, really important and more important to us as marketers to be compliant within our own industries, but also to cater our marketing to our customers' needs. We're living in a privacy-first landscape, and that's only going to increase in the next coming months and years. But we as marketers also were challenged to deliver that context, that personal relevance to our consumers. So making sure we're abiding, by consent is best practices for marketing, but it's also really good to kind of future-proof our company. This new API is also going to be really, really important if we want to integrate with a third-party consent management tool. Rarely, is email opt-out the only type of consent that we actually want to track. There's cookie consent. There's probably consent to email about events. There's all different types of things that we want to manage, and a lot of larger companies have tools specifically for that. And with the old email opt-out with Pardot, it was really, really challenging because you have to get the data from Pardot into Salesforce and manage that sync relationship, then export that to another third-party system. Why not interface it directly with Pardot? And that's what this new API offers. I also want to make a quick note that over the summer, Apple announced that it would, as a function of releasing iOS 15, functionally be pre-opening emails, so that what actually happens when you have an Apple device and you upgrade to the newest operating system, Apple's actually downloading all the emails that are coming into your mail server and actually opening them, which completely obscures your open rates. And a lot of our automations and a lot of our KPIs as marketers have that baseline, open rate as a performance metric. This may or may not be super relevant to your business, but as part of the spring 2022 release, Pardot offers an open activity report. This is going to be available. You'll probably, if you're an admin, you'll probably see a toolbar or a message prompt up at the top of your Pardot account when you log in, highlighting that they have this tool. It's also available in the marketing assets section of your Pardot reports. But it'll show all the different assets that you have, like engagement programs, automation rules, dynamic lists that have rules based on the open action, and give you the opportunity to actually change that to something a little more maybe farther up the marketing funnel as a general best practice. We're going to think about maybe using clicks instead, because clicks are not something that is impacted by Apple's email.
I got to jump in here because I feel like Kevin Hart, and I'm about to say what, because I completely missed this. I'm so glad you brought this up. Having trackers on opens and clicks is critical in my organization, and now to see that opens is completely, how should I say, polluted is sad. And needing to deep dive on this. So if any of you really need to help sales understand what their campaigns or their marketing or any of their Pardot broadcasts are all about by looking at the number of times your emails are opened or clicked, this is huge. So thank you, Tigh. I completely missed this.
Yeah, and again, this may be really influential in your org. It may not be. Open rate.
When you rate it over time, it's really useful to get a sense of your readership, right? Who prefers an open versus a click, right? And to sales, those who click are obviously more engaged than those who don't, particularly if you have links in your blasts. So we use those kinds of metrics to help assess what's happening. And I'm going to be downgrading the opens because in the past we thought the opens were mostly people reading the body. Now it's automation.
Yeah, depending on what version of Pardot you have, there are more detailed. Now these metrics don't roll up, but you can see, glanced rate and read rate. I think that glance is like 2 to 10 seconds, and read rate is over 10 seconds. We can still, a mail server is not going to skew those rates, I don't believe.
But wait, before I lose my train of thought, what I do is I aggregate this stuff into metrics and feed it back into Salesforce objects to make it easier for people to look at their accounts and see totals at the account level, right? In terms of readership, whether it be opens and clicks and their contact level. So this is really impactful in the way you aggregate these metrics and present them. You can trend them. You can do a lot with these numbers, which I'm trying to do now with B2B, which hopefully next time we meet, I'll have more information on.
Yeah, if you're running any scoring off of opens, that's definitely something. And thanks, Thomas, is jumping in to say that it's 2 to 8 seconds is glance and that read is over 8 seconds. Thanks for that.
Cool.
The thing to think about is really looking at your own open rates and seeing if you have a tier of Pardot where you can see devices. There's a good chance that maybe Apple is it may be the majority of your recipients. It may not be a significant portion depending on what industry you are in. If you're sending out,
that's for sure.
In my experience, industries like finance or government are very much invested in desktop version of Outlook, and iPhones are not sort of the norm. But if you do any consumer-facing emails, almost everybody's got an iPhone, or like a good portion of most demographics will have a significant portion with an iOS device, and you just want to be mindful of that. If you're doing any scoring, proprietary scoring, or using Pardot Score based on opens, it's just something to think about. All right, so also I mentioned that the Pardot email templates are being made available for drip programs as part of the winter release. Pardot email builder templates are now available to be activated using this activate for automation button for automation rules and completion actions. You can also designate a tracker URL specifically for a particular email template. So if you have different business units or different domains you're sending an email out from, you can actually manage that in the Pardot email builder template experience within the Salesforce CMS as opposed to Pardot. The other enhancement for the Pardot email builder templates is they can also be designated available to engage. This is actually something in the Pardot settings menu. You can make all of your templates available for engage. You can only use Pardot email builder templates for engage, or you can enable both. So you can use the legacy Pardot templates and the email builder templates for engage, or you can choose to use one or another. Previously, engage only worked with the legacy Pardot builder, and I think all engage templates need to be designated available as a one-to-one type of email, and one-to-one emails were not supported by the new email builder. Now they do in fact work with the Pardot email builder experience. I mentioned the launch of the Pardot landing page builder. There's also some additional styling and coding options. Now, one of the big drawbacks that I see in both the email builder and the landing page builder is they're not customizable as entities, as like closed assets, because they all have the responsive structure built into the asset themselves. But there's no way that you can go into an email template and see the raw HTML. You can't export the raw HTML or upload, the body of the HTML and the CSS to the email. They're much easier to build, but you can't, you can't design one from scratch using just code. The same thing goes with the landing page builder. The landing page for you Pardot experts are usually styled using something called a layout template. You can use a series of stock templates, but they're very blocky and several generations of web standards sort of dated. But the landing page builder has a serious challenge in terms of the ability to actually add any tracking. So I'm a very data-driven marketer, and if I create a Pardot landing page, there's a good chance I'm using it for an advertising campaign. So I'm sending Facebook ads or Google ads directly to that landing page. If I can't track that page, there's no point in me utilizing a landing page at all. And that was a limitation of the landing page builder. What this new enhanced experience, or these new the spring 22 release opened up is styling options and then the ability to actually add code. Think your Google Analytics code, your Facebook tracking pixel, your Google Optimize, Crazy Egg, whatever types of on-site tracking tools you actually want to create. There's a code section, and you can also style forms as well. Although I did find out recently that if you change any styling in the form and you import a Pardot form, if you have implemented anything in the styling section of the form, which is available on the add CSS section, Pardot will actually overwrite the landing page builder. So again, these new builders are relatively new, but they are the future of these features are the future of the product. Also, as part of the spring 22 release is a new Einstein engagement frequency. I don't think we talked about it too much, but as part of an earlier release, I think it was winter 22, maybe it was summer, Salesforce released Einstein send time optimization. If you have done a lot of A/B testing, you'll know that send time is not one of the things you can technically, or via the A/B test tool at least, actually test. So they released an artificial intelligence supplemented feature that will send out emails based on when your prospects seem more likely to open them. This new feature is sort of an elaboration on that. And it's called engagement frequency. And if you're like me, you probably have dynamic lists populating on the fly, tracking how many times a prospect has been emailed in a relative time period. So like I keep a suppression list of anyone who's been emailed 3 times in the past week, and I have to remember to add that suppression list to any emails or to engagement programs I have going out. Instead, using engagement frequency, we can make decisions based on whether a prospect is, according to Einstein, undersaturated, oversaturated, or on target. And saturation is a measure of not only how many emails that someone has been sent, but how they're actually engaging with those emails over a particular period of time, and creates a much more useful metric that is actually stored in a Pardot prospect default field. So you can leverage this in automations and rules in our engagement studio campaigns, creating sort of divergent branches based on if AI is telling us that this person could stand to get more emails, or if this person is already checked out of emails. Again, if you have Einstein today, if you're in Pardot Advanced, you'll have access to this feature. And if you do turn it on, it's going to be in Pardot settings. It will take a couple of hours to actually crunch the data, because again, Einstein is calculating patterns based on all of your data holistically. All right, so those are the features that have been made available as of today. There are a couple other things in the Pardot roadmap that I want to talk about. I also want to, I don't have a safe harbor slide, but make sure that you make any purchasing decisions based on products that are generally available, not based on any forward thinking product features that are planned to be developed. But I am an early adopter, so I like to talk and think about these features. So we're going to go over a couple of the things that Salesforce and Pardot have announced that they're looking into. So I talked about this a little bit already, and this is an open beta, and that's the Slack integration. And we can actually combine Slack's own Markdown language and our HTML personalization to catch our team's attention when a prospect actually does something. And so think that this is available via a completion action. So if someone does something with an email, if they click a link in an email, or if they fill out a particular form, we can actually take immediate action to actually send a notification to our internal team that this person has actually done something, making our marketing and sales operation a whole lot more agile and notified in real time, as opposed to the kind of antiquated, notify user action in an engagement studio program, or create a Salesforce task. I can't think of the number of times a random Pardot notification or Salesforce task really didn't actually get a end user to actually do something. So if they're in Slack, this may help. And again, there's so much work being done on Pardot's API. Right now, like I said before, it's kind of at parity with previous versions, but there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of work being done to allow the API to read and write incredibly large data sets in a timely manner. And Pardot has announced, though again, safe harbor, that they're going to release additional asynchronous endpoints for things like list membership. So if you have segmentation done in an external tool, you can sync that data. And I don't know if this is actually a practical use case, but I could think that something like CDP or another data lake, you could actually sync that data over back and forth to Pardot, building different segments using the API in a much more flexible manner that doesn't require, hundreds of thousands of API tools as well. The other thing that Salesforce has announced is there's going to be much more broad access to objects in Pardot. Very few objects in Pardot have actually been moved from Pardot into being native Salesforce assets. It's happening, though it's happening kind of slowly. The email template has sort of been moved over, along with email. Snippets were one of the first native Salesforce objects in Pardot. But the more that assets are available in Salesforce as native Salesforce objects, the more we can do Salesforce reporting on them. We can use Salesforce automation. And so think if we could actually use Salesforce to, copy an engagement studio campaign via the API, or run a Salesforce report on email clicks or landing page engagement. We can sort of do that today if you set up campaigns just so, but it's not really a lot of the data is not fully native to Salesforce yet. So the API is going to hopefully improve that. Pardot is also expanding their marketing setup home, and they have announced they're going to add a bunch of configuration settings in Pardot in addition to sort of the basic setup, which personally I find very confusing, and I don't really like this whole interface because they keep on changing things around where different setup things live in Salesforce setup and the Pardot section of the Salesforce setup, and moving them over to the marketing setup, where there's a whole like sort of onboarding guide, which doesn't really make sense yet. But the whole idea here is, I think, that the Pardot settings menu, where you see all of your utilization and usage metrics, so how many different assets you have running as a proportion of your total bandwidth of your account. All that usage and configuration in the Pardot settings menu, I think, is going to gradually be moved over to the marketing setup. And you'll have access to sort of manage that as a Pardot administrator, the same way that a Service Cloud or Sales Cloud administrator would manage Salesforce configuration through the Salesforce setup menu. And the theme here is really that a lot of these Pardot features and functionality are being platformized in Salesforce, as opposed to continuing to support as a standalone Pardot application. All right, we talked about the email builder and the landing page builder being opened up in Salesforce, but they're really just the beginning. Pardot is planning to roll out the builder interface to other types of assets as well. And they've announced quick start with a bunch of templates that I think you can download off the App Exchange already. But there's going to be a tutorial for how to get started using a series of stock templates for our email templates and landing pages using the new builder experience. And then I think this is the last thing, and I saved the best for last. This is probably the most excited feature in terms of my own excitement. I've been asking for this for years and years, and that is conditional completion actions. So currently, completion actions are the only type of automation that's action-based. And by action-based, I mean they fire when someone does something, and they only fire when someone does something. There's no way to fire a completion action based on any criteria whatsoever. It's basically if they do something, the action fires. So if we want to actually have to evaluate criteria, we actually have to sort of daisy chain multiple different assets together. So we have to make a prospect fill out multiple forms, to redirect, maybe someone who has this particular criteria versus another criteria. Or another workaround I've done in the past is, if we want divergent logic to fire an action based on someone filling out a form, but have like the A group get this action, the B group get this action, you have to create an automation rule to actually fire the action, and keeping track of like who has met that criteria over multiple assets is a lot to keep track of as a marketer. And I guarantee you that the next person who works on that marketing automation instance is going to have no clue where to look, how that logic is sort of hacked together. So in this example, with this conditional automation logic, we could send hypothetically 2 different autoresponders to 2 different people based on the values of the field that they filled out in a form submission. We could totally personalize that autoresponder based on things like someone's location, based on their specified product interest. We could even cultivate a very personalized experience based on maybe a UTM value that we're capturing in a hidden field on a product form based on the marketing source or the channel. And this ability, I think, I get really excited when I start talking about delivering contextual relevance to marketing and adding conditional logic into completion actions is a pretty incredible idea. And we'll see how it rolls out in practice. There was one more feature in the roadmap here that I want to touch on, and that is going to be Engagement Studio is opening up to third-party external actions. And an example of that I already talked about, maybe register a prospect to a Zoom webinar. Previously, the only way to integrate prospect engagement with third-party marketing tools was via connector. And like I said earlier, the native connector integrations have not been updated in, I would say, at least 5, maybe 7, 8 years. And a lot of external companies have developed their own integrations, Zapier and whatnot. Pardot is announced again with this sort of mandate towards extensibility. The ability to have external actions integrated into our Engagement Studio campaign, so it's not just going to be emails. We can really use it as a truly like if this then that for marketing. I have no idea what platforms this will become available for, as this all is very future thinking, but the sky's really the limit in terms of what we can do, the more we can integrate in our automation. So I want to just throw a couple links up on the screen here. If you are interested in the release notes themselves, you'll see that sfdc.co/release notes _spring 22 will take you to the digest version of what I just talked about. There's another link to the Trailblazer community here in the sfdc.co/B2B Trailblazers. And then if you have ideas, or if you want to vote on ideas of and actually impact the product roadmap yourself, go to the Idea Exchange and add your comments, your feature ideas, or feedback. And Pardot takes all of that very, very seriously in terms of prioritizing what customers actually want to see within the org. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining today. Yeah, it was great to hang out. Mike and I will hang out for a little while longer. We can chat. I'd offer everyone another beer if I had the capacity to do so. Or
I just want to jump in here. I want to interrupt you to say, just to everyone here, how lucky we are to have Tigh in this group. He is beyond expertise here in many levels, and to not take advantage of him is a miss. Please share within your organizations, that this group has a lot of expert leadership here. I don't call myself anywhere as close to Ty's experience, but I think that it's something worth recognizing and valuing in the community. Again, we always pitch, you get what you get out of it. What you get into is what you get out of it. I just want to throw out a prop here to say thank you, Tigh, for investing all the time that you do in this team, in this group.
Well, thank you, Mike. Flattery will get you everywhere. I'm not sure.
It's true.
My expertise is.
You gotta call it out. You gotta call it out, man.
Well, I appreciate the plaudits, but just to echo Mike's point, we really encourage any engagement and any feedback, ideas, anything you want to learn about. If there are people, I actually had someone I won't say who it is, but someone I really admire that I was trying to get to come to this session, which fell through. But if you want to talk to product managers, if there are any ABM solution, if there are any vendors you're interested in hearing about that are really relevant to marketing automation, Mike and I will really, try to make that happen. As well as, I do this for a living and talk about Pardot, but I never thought I'd be a very good consultant because I just tell everybody how to do everything. I'm not very good at billing hourly, but I do it because I'm really interested in it. But I know a good bit. I certainly do not know everything, and I learn something every time I actually research, some dark corner of Pardot oddities. So please, and again, nothing has to happen today, but feel free, to reach out with questions on the Trailblazer community. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Even Twitter, social media. I think we're both pretty easy to approach, and just want to encourage anyone to reach out if we can help you on your marketing automation journey. We'd love to help.
I guess we're all good then, huh?
I don't know. Does anyone have any questions, comments, any thoughts about?
Well, I took the admin test for the first time the other day. I didn't pass it, but at least I know where I did wrong and that kind of stuff. So, and I'm also looking for entry-level positions in the Salesforce ecosystem. So it's good to attend these events like this to meet people like you and, getting to learn what I like and what I don't like about Salesforce.
Cool. Yeah, was it the Salesforce admin cert?
Yeah.
Yeah, that requires a lot of study. It is intense for sure.
No small achievement.
Yeah, and this is going back a couple of years. There's a guy who taught a course. Peter White. Just trying to find. He did a Salesforce admin training. It is a paid course, but it's relatively affordable. Let me just see if I can find his.
I did do a whole bunch of Pardot badges and stuff because I've done some email marketing, that kind of stuff. So they kind of like fall a little bit that way. But sometimes I feel like when you're doing email marketing, it's like a ticking time bomb, especially if you have bounce emails. Maybe it isn't as scary as I think it is.
It depends. I mean, email is like, it can be going okay, and then it can sort of fall off a cliff. If you have too many bounces in your deliverability, but deliverability is like, it's not one thing. It's a whole bunch of different factors. You have to consider
Absolutely.
the design of your email, image to text ratio, the words you use. Most importantly, is probably the quality of your database. I always advise people to
I think that's paramount. The quality of your database dictates the
Yeah.
deliverability, and how should I say, the intelligence or the thoroughness of your sales organization or your marketing team that's feeding you those contents. So, it's a rising tide effort always.
And I'm looking for that. I'm trying to find the name of this gentleman who teaches this course.
It'll come to you at like midnight tonight. You're like,
I know. I'll post it in the chat. I will post it in the chat. Yeah, the only reason I'm mentioning it is I took the course, and it was I found it super useful. I don't know if I would have passed the course without taking it, especially coming from, I became sort of an accidental admin, as many people happens to many people, and really I got my hands much dirtier with Pardot before Salesforce, and then really wanted to
if you find it later, Ty, you can post it on our site, right?
Yeah, that's true. Dead airspace of me Googling is probably. Yeah, you know what, Andrew, I will post this in the Trailblazer community when I find it. But yeah, good luck in your journey. There are some Google documents circulating with study guides for the admin exam that can be kind of helpful to find. I would not recommend utilizing like the dumps, the cheat sheets that you can nefariously acquire, but you're doing yourself a disservice there.
Yeah, because you're in it to be a professional. You're not in it to
exactly. The first job you have, that someone tells you to actually do something and you don't have a clue.
Totally.
Yeah, you're not in a good place.
I think
all right. Yeah. If no one has any other questions, have a great night, everyone. Thanks for spending the time. Great to see everybody. And we'll look forward to hopefully having an in-person event, sometime in the future.
Soon.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Have a good evening.
All right. See you, everybody.